Ruin DLC for Security Breach has finally been released, and so far it's been pretty good. I played it live over on Twitch on release day, and I had a lot of fun with it. I want to take some time here to share my thoughts on Security Breach and Ruin based on my experiences with both. And don't worry, Sister Location is still in progress, but I wanted to talk about Ruin, so yeah. When Security Breach released back in December 2021, there were several issues. A lot of players ran into bugs ranging from funny to game-breaking. If you've played it yourself or saw Markiplier's gameplay from when it released, you know how frustrating it can be.
Freddy! Oh my god, Freddy!
Now, I didn't play Security Breach at release, but I did play it several months later in March 2022. This was after the major 1.05 patch released, which changed quite a bit. My second playthrough took place this year in July 2023. Obviously, this one was after the last major patch, so I was playing on version 1.11. Now, first, I want to talk about how well it runs. On a basic level, Security Breach wasn't very well optimized, especially when it first released. When streaming this originally, my PC had a Ryzen 9 3900X processor, 32GB of RAM, and an RTX 2060 graphics card, which was pretty good for the time. These are all well above the recommended spec on the Steam page, but I still ran into massive lag spikes and issues with playing the game and streaming it at the same time. I ended up having to run the game on my laptop and use a capture card to connect it to my PC to stream it without issues. I upgraded my graphics card to the RTX 4070 recently, and it worked out okay on my replay, but I did still have a couple of lag spikes. I should mention that I use NVIDIA Broadcast to filter my mic audio as well. For some reason, playing Monty Golf caused it to crash, which resulted in my microphone cutting out. I don't think I can blame this one on Steelwool, but I wanted to mention it. It's N64. Okay, there we go. Okay. Yeah, no, NVIDIA Broadcast just tried to crash. My bad, I'm so sorry. I hope it wasn't muted for too long. Ruin performed about the same for me with just a few lag spikes in OBS during loading screens, which is to be expected. Running both the game on the same graphics card is a little bit rough, but hopefully that's it.
There was some crunchiness there.
Yeah, it's because we're on a loading screen. It's tuned up with the frame drop, so I think it's just the loading screen. The main thing I wanted to mention here is the new and improved settings menu. It's kind of simple, but I found the interface here way easier to navigate. I don't have much to say here, I just think it's neat. Saving is one of the core mechanics that changed quite a bit between the base game and the DLC. Something I really liked about Security Breach was the fact that the save stations take a few seconds to activate. You can't make a save just anywhere, so you can't spam saves to get through tricky sections. Since it takes some time to open, you also have to make sure you aren't in danger before you do save. As someone who's been screwed over by quick saving at the wrong time in Skyrim, I like the way this works. At release, the save stations were all disabled at 6 AM. If you wanted to collect all the CDs, collectibles, and complete the extra tasks for the other endings, you would need to do it all without saving. If you didn't mind cheating a bit, you could go collect the driver assist bot head from Roxy Raceway. This sets the time back to 5:15 and reactivates the save stations, but it wasn't an intentional feature. Thankfully, Steelwool listened to the community, so they added a single save station to the atrium to use after 6 AM, which made both of my playthroughs a lot better. In Ruin, they sidestepped the mechanic entirely by just using autosaves as you go through the game. Because Ruin is very linear compared to Security Breach, having save stations scattered around isn't as helpful. They also added in the chapter system to allow you to backtrack for collectibles, and they included a little check mark so you can tell which chapters you still need to revisit.
Do you want to know which?
Oh, that is so good. Sorry, I just realized that it has all collectibles found for each chapter. That is so handy.
Yeah.
Way to go, Steelwool. I like this. I think both of these save systems complement their gameplay styles, so while I personally prefer manually saving in games, I think both are perfectly fine. This leads into my next point, which is the style of the gameplay. Security Breach was open world, whereas Ruin is very linear. Both of these have their own appeal, so which style you prefer is just personal preference. Which was executed better is pretty clear. Now, I'm a sucker for an open world game. Although Security Breach had a lot of bugs as a result of the open world aspect, I still like being able to backtrack to different areas after getting upgrades to find different collectibles I may have missed. But as cool as the Pizzaplex looks, one of the things that kind of annoyed me on my blind playthrough of Security Breach was how weird it is to navigate in some areas. The choice to make Ruin linear really paid off here. For one, there was less chance of sequence breaking, either intentional or accidental.
Ooh, hey! Whoa! We are not where we were.
It also made it a lot easier for myself as the player to fully explore the environment and see all there is to offer. There are still some hidden areas that you may miss on a first playthrough, which makes it rewarding to replay. Overall, I think it was a pretty big improvement. If you're a longtime FNAF fan, you know that one of the most iconic features of the early games was the cameras. Steelwool included cameras in both the base game and the DLC as a nod to that, which I do appreciate. I actually used the camera system quite a bit on my first playthrough of Security Breach to try to spot enemies and navigate the Pizzaplex. I can see what they were going for here, but quite frankly, this UI sucked. Each camera is marked with a single rectangle, just like the older FNAF games. For FNAF 1, this worked well since you really just need to know where they are in proximity to you. For an open world game where your position changes constantly, it just doesn't work. It's hard to tell which way a camera is facing or which room it's even in.
The other thing is I wish that these cameras had like a thing that indicates which direction they're facing by default, you know? Because it can be kind of difficult to get your bearings.
A lot of players never ended up using the system, either because it didn't feel necessary or because it was more of a hindrance than anything. Ruin implemented this much better. For one, the camera icons actually give you an idea of which direction they're facing. Since the cameras can only be accessed at camera stations which don't move, it was a lot easier to figure out what I was looking at on them. Plus, the intercom system was a nice nod to FNAF 3. If you watched me play Security Breach, you'll know that one of the most annoying things to me was the lack of labeling on the map.
The big issue I have is like the maps are not very good at like telling you where to go or like kind of funneling you to your location. Like they don't have to like have just like a one like hallway that teaches you where to go. But like there should be like a lot more like clues within game design that like point you in the general direction. I feel like this game doesn't have a lot of those is my one concern, right?
It shows you the layout of the building, but doesn't tell you what any of the shapes are. I guess Mapbot just expects you to look around and navigate based on the signs around you, but sometimes that isn't super helpful. Admittedly, there are often voice lines where the characters tell you what to do next, but since I was streaming, I missed some of those. I think even just including a bit more info in the missions tab would help here. Ruin pretty much entirely gets rid of the map other than on the cameras, which makes sense. In a linear game, there isn't really a need for a map when you can just walk forward. Thankfully, they also added a lot more visual cues as to where you need to go in the more complex areas. For example, in the daycare, there are pieces of paper with arrows everywhere that point you towards the objective. The best example of this visual guidance, I think, is during the Freddy chase sequence. Even though we're facing a dark area that kind of looks like a dead end, there's this cable on the floor that leads around the corner. When that one ends, another cable leads us for the rest of the chase until we find the catwalks that have railings to guide us. I know this is super specific, but I just really appreciate the environmental cues here. Good job. In Security Breach, there were quite a few arcade cabinets scattered around the Pizzaplex. Some of these were playable minigames, others were just for decoration. My personal favorites were the Princess Quest games, but there was also a BB World minigame and a Monty Golf one. Notably, there were only 9 holes that were actually playable in Monty Golf, despite there being 18 in the game files. There was also an arcade cabinet in the bakery for Chica's Feeding Frenzy, but it wasn't functional despite being mentioned in the in-game messages. Ruin restored both of these to a playable state, and they were pretty fun. Reaching level 20 for Chica's Feeding Frenzy gives you her voice box, which you can reinstall later on. It doesn't change anything, but you can do it. Getting par or better in Monty Golf doesn't seem to unlock anything so far, but it's nice that it's here. Of course, it wouldn't be a video talking about Security Breach without mentioning the glitches. Here's a quick rundown of some of the glitches I saw during my first playthrough. Freddy constantly teleporting into the Monty boss fight, Moon getting stuck in the daycare, despawning Chica and Roxy during the Showtime segment by taking the elevator to the lobby, getting the Mr. Hippo Fridge Magnet twice, textures failing to load in properly even when close up, not triggering a death right away when falling into this pit, and pressing the garbage compactor button while in Freddy, which caused me to die during the cutscene because of the low battery. This is not an exhaustive list, but it gives you an idea of what the game was like. On my replay, I found some different glitches. I had some instances where Monty was climbing around on the railings in the daycare. How you doing up there, Monty? I found Giga Chica in the kitchen. What are you, Chica, how are you getting aggroed on me right now? Chica, what the fuck? Chica!
Let me take you to your parents.
Chica, how do you know I'm here? And Roxy was weirdly persistent in the rehearsal room several times, but thankfully this couch causes her to forget we exist. Ma'am? You have a VTuber now? Hell yeah, best. What the shit? I didn't know you could even spawn in here, ma'am. Nope. 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 You see nothing. Feck all the way off, Roxy. Holy shit. The same elevator glitch to despawn Chica and Roxy during Showtime still works, and I somehow encountered more deloads than in my original playthrough. The game also completely froze once in the middle of the lights out segment in the daycare. Oh, the lag. It's just frozen. Am I dead? No frames, we love to see it. Yeah, the game is straight up frozen. Guys, remember when I said this game is not super buggy anymore? Incredible. I wouldn't call it a glitch necessarily, but I also got killed by Roxy right after completing the prize counter office segment on both playthroughs. It was very annoying. Ruin is generally much better, but there are still a few issues you might encounter. I didn't personally experience the mask teleporting issues others saw, but I did find a couple of minor annoyances. I actually noticed while editing that if you're crouched when Monty jumps out of the sewer pipe, the crouch icon will stay during the opening logo. It's not super noticeable, but I found it kind of funny. On my first playthrough, when I entered the bathroom in Roxy Raceway, I somehow got killed by Monty even though he wasn't there. Oh, shit! Hi, Monty, how's it going? My guess is that his hitbox was so large that he got us through a wall or something. I also got killed by Music Man in the vents later on, even though I was no longer in the vent. Excuse me? Did he just see me hop out of the vent, pick me up, bring me back into the vent, and then run off? Oh my god, Music Man, that's fucked up. At least this time I got a checkpoint so I didn't have to replay the section. To be fair, I did have a similar run-in with Roxy during my replay of Security Breach. I hid in a room, but she still somehow got me even though she wasn't in the room. I actually didn't sneak away, I actually sprinted. What the?
Where was she? I also had an issue where the credits didn't play for most of the endings. During the Brazil ending, they finally played, but they were really laggy for some reason. Like, this isn't... I don't think this is OBS. No, this is not OBS. This is just the game is actually laggy. They made everything else about the game super well optimized, in my opinion. But then the credits are what lags? Like, okay. When revisiting chapters, if you use the intercom on the cameras, Cassie will play her dialogue as if it's the first time she's seeing this. Yeah, again, we've been through this, Cassie. Every time we load. It's not game breaking, but when you're jumping around chapters, it gets old pretty quickly. Right at the start of the game, there's this ladder in the elevator shaft. Sometimes when climbing up, rather than ending up on the landing, I'll get knocked down to the bottom by the gate. Are you for real right now? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Thankfully, when you climb up a second time, you can just walk through the gate, but the climbing speed is really slow, so it's a little bit annoying. Wait, am I like soft locked now because this thing's closed, or... Oh no, thank god.
You'll just climb through it.
Thank god. I was about to say, if I get soft locked this early on... The most annoying for me, though, was dealing with the music men. It seems like the teleporting doesn't work perfectly for them because quite often I would use the intercom to lure a group, then take off or put on the mask, and suddenly there was one right in front of me who didn't follow the herd. Again, it's not game breaking, but I definitely struggled with the segment the first time through. Oh! What the? Did I walk into one? Oh my god. I do want to stress that all of these are what I would consider fairly minor bugs. They're not going to get you soft locked, but they are worth bringing up. Now let's talk about the general feel and tone of the games. For better or worse, I think both Security Breach and Ruin have good atmosphere. Now, hear me out. The overall appearance in Security Breach is consistent and it looks good. They really nailed the 80s aesthetic, and the Pizzaplex has a lot to look at and explore. The complaint you'll hear a lot is that it isn't scary, which is fair. Other than a few select areas, the majority of the Pizzaplex generally looks like a normal, fun mall. I personally like how it looks, but it doesn't really look like your typical FNAF game. Ruin is objectively much spookier. Most areas are super dark, requiring you to use a flashlight. They also added some mysterious sounds like clunks and rustling noises. Usually these are just to make you uneasy, but they definitely succeed in it. The only real issue I have here is that I'd often accidentally look away from the jump scares. I missed the daycare door slamming at the start of the game 3 times in a row because I was always looking to the left when I got to that point. You could argue that you're just supposed to be scared by the sound, but in that case, why even animate the door slam? There were also moments where Cassie comments on something that has happened, but I haven't seen it yet. The biggest example is when you're in the VR world and she comments that the bunny thing is back.
That rabbit thing's back again. You said it was
Is it?
here.
Meanwhile, my view of him is completely blocked by these things. Obviously that isn't the end of the world, but I think having some sort of cue to make sure you're looking in the right direction would help. And finally, let's talk about the gameplay as a whole. I'll be the first to admit that I'm a massive coward when it comes to first-person horror games, so Security Breach actually startled me quite a bit. I got nervous during stealth sections, and I tended to just give up and become a turtle if there was a risk of a jump scare. This wore off after the first few hours since it's kind of hard to feel scared when there are funny glitches everywhere. Security Breach had fast-paced, intense sequences where you're being chased by an animatronic. Whether you find those scary or not is based on your scare tolerance, but the fact is they were more action-oriented. These weren't so much scary for me as much as they were stressful, but they still got my heart rate up a bit. The jump scares on their own weren't that bad for me because you can usually tell when one is going to happen. Yeah, I froze up. We're good. It's fine. The animatronics chasing you have loud footsteps, and the screen shake gets worse the closer they are. Ma'am, please leave me alone, please. Ma'am, God! This is basically just a really obvious warning system that gives you a chance to prepare for the fact that you're going to get jump scared. After the first few times, I could tell when the animatronic was going to get me, so I got less and less scared as the game went on. To this day, the most effective jump scares are the ones caused by glitches or mapbot. Because there isn't a warning, they actually succeeded in startling me. While Ruin did a lot well, I think the actual sense of danger was pretty weak here. I definitely got startled at times, but there were many parts where I thought there would be a chase scene or that I would need to hide, and then nothing happened with it. Anytime I see somewhere I have to crouch, I'm like, this is suspicious. I'm being made to crouch so many times for no reason, and there's scratch marks everywhere. Monty's absolutely going to chase me through here. It got to the point that during my blind playthrough, I started to wonder if it was even possible to get a game over screen from the animatronics. So far, I don't think any of these animatronics actually want to hurt us, because I don't think I've even had the potential to get hurt so far. I'm just going to run. God damn it! Okay, so you can actually die. So I've been disproven, but I don't think, like, Chica or anybody could actually hurt us, because everything, again, has been, like, very, like, Chica was like, whoa, and then she's like, I'm dead, never mind. AR Bunny is a big example of this. The first time he showed up, I got kind of freaked out. Once I realized you can just get rid of him by taking off the mask, he lost a lot of his danger factor and just seemed annoying. Okay, well, I'll use this first, but then I'll get the collectible. Oh my god, my guy. Can you stop?
Now let's get into the gameplay mechanics of Ruin. The anomaly hunting I thought was okay, but pretty uneventful. It would have been nice if there were more instances like in Roxy Raceway where you need to complete it under pressure. Recharging the conduits was personally my favorite. It's pretty straightforward, but I find it fun for some reason. The nodes were pretty cool the first few times, but I think I would have liked a little bit more variation. After a few nodes, it starts to get kind of repetitive. That said, I do like how they work with following the lines around the Pizzaplex to find the child nodes and the little puzzle at the end. One thing I really liked about Ruin was how they swapped the old immersion breaking pop-up system with the new Helpy pop-ups. They don't usually pause your gameplay, and they contribute to the story, which is pretty nice. They also don't rely on Helpy as much to explain every mechanic to you. I suppose if I had to sum up the difference in gameplay, I'd say Security Breach is more action-based, whereas Ruin is more puzzle-based. Which style you like more kinda just boils down to personal preference at that point. So overall, what are my thoughts? Ruin did a lot well, and I think it generally lived up to the hype. It's clear that there's a lot more polish on it, and I really appreciate that. If I had to give any criticism, I would say adding some more fast-paced segments like chase sequences would help balance things out a bit better. Interrupting the quiet, eerie atmosphere occasionally with some form of danger helps keep the player uneasy in those quiet parts. I think Ruin is great as is, but adding a little bit more danger would make it even better. That said, I want to know what you guys think. Leave a comment if you agree, disagree, or if there's anything I missed, and I will see you in another video. Bye-bye.